How are you guys doing? It's been quite a while. I'm Michelle, and I'm going to be reading Jim Stevens' book. It's called 101 Proofs for God. 101 true scientific stories, heavenly inspired, I think, about the absolute existence of God. Yeah. So we are going to get started. Yeah, look at this incredible sweatshirt. A female war veteran gave to me. It's amazing, right? Okay. I am going to jump ahead and be reading proof number 99. And we'll get back to the other ones. No worries. I'm going to get them all covered. All right. Chapter 99 is called Complexity, Equilibrium, and Energy Costs. I'm sure you remember the phrase from physics class that a body in motion tends to stay in motion and a body at rest tends to stay at rest. This is known as Newton's first law of motion. This has an interesting application to recent research on evolution. As you can imagine, it takes a certain amount of energy to produce something new and different. And mutating new systems is the essence of how evolution creates new species. If forces are in a state of equilibrium, then generally there will not be change. Darwinism requires that there be change over time, and therefore there must be an input of energy. Here is a definition of equilibrium. A condition in which all influences acting cancel each other so that a static or balanced situation results. In physics, equilibrium results from the cancellation of forces acting on an object. In chemistry, it occurs when chemical reactions are proceeding in such a way that the amount of each substance in a system remains the same. In a July 2014 peer-reviewed article in the journal Complexity, researchers Snoke, Cox, and Petcher have realized that the theory of evolution has a major problem. Their abstract says this: a scalable model of biological evolution is presented which includes energy cost for building new elements and multiple paths for obtaining new functions. The model allows a population with a continual increase of complexity, but as time passes, detrimental mutations accumulate. This model shows the crucial importance of accounting for the energy cost of new structures in models of biological evolution. The bottom line seems to be that whatever cause generated the biological features we observe, unguided Darwinian evolution is not it. Natural selection requires many different mutations to choose from to get one that is useful. Having enough alternatives for success of natural selection would create too much dead weight on the population to be able to continue to thrive. They used a computational model to simulate the processes that must take place for evolution to be true. The theory of evolution says that natural selection chooses one from among many variations in a survival of the fittest process. The essential starting point, therefore, must first be the existence of the many variations for natural selection to be able to act on something. If you don't have many variations already existing, then the odds of natural selection working successfully become totally impossible. In order to get many variations, there is necessarily an energy requirement for each one. The researchers tried different levels of energy as the amount needed to make a new variation and then tested to see what the results would be. If it takes a lot of energy, then very few will happen. If it takes a small amount of energy, then you can get an abundance of mutations. There is also another energy cost to be factored in. It takes energy for carrying along useless or redundant systems. The more efficient a living system is, the more likely it will be successful. Excess baggage is likely to be dropped. So in other words, once a good design exists, it tends to be in equilibrium and it will continue. It will not develop other systems because of the extra energy required to develop those other systems. Adding new variations onto an already functioning and efficient system would require extra energy that the organism would tend to select against. As an example, how do you evolve a human pelvis from a monkey pelvis? The orientation, structure, and strength points are very different because a human walks upright. The monkey pelvis works fine for the monkey. Why would a partially human pelvis and a partially monkey pelvis be remotely a good idea from an efficiency perspective? Walking either way would be difficult. If you were trying to develop a monkey into a human, you could make the same argument for legs, feet, arms, hands, and on and on. The model simulation showed that in most cases, no changes would take place in a working system. It also showed another problem. If you plug a number into the model that would represent a low cost of energy in order to make a new variation, then you would indeed get lots of variations. This is necessary for natural selection to be able to operate. However, those many variations would tend to be carried forward even if they did not have a functional purpose. This ultimately caused the organism to fail from the burden of useless vestigial systems. In order for natural selection to function, the theory says there have to be a lot of alternatives to choose from, but the modeling based on energy costs demonstrates a big challenge for Darwinism. The model results show that too many of those various new systems would not get discarded because they are not costly to keep maintaining. The organism would eventually have to fail just from the burden. There was no stable energy cost point for getting to the scenario where natural selection could work its magic. They either got no evolution or they got too much useless evolution, which natural selection could not deal with. Snoke, Cox, and Petcher found the energy cost of producing variations showed two outcomes. Both falsify the theory of evolution. There are two competing processes. On one hand, the energy cost of carrying vestigial or non-functioning systems makes them weakly deleterious, not neutral, which tends to reduce their number. Conversely, without stabs in the dark, that is, new systems which might eventually obtain new functions but as yet have none, no novelty can ever occur and no increase of complexity. Thus, if the energy cost of vestigial systems is too high, no evolution will occur. So here is the big problem, Jim says. The tendency, it turns out, is for everything to stay in equilibrium once an efficient system is attained. From there, no evolution occurs. The energy cost of creating many variations so natural selection could take place is too high. Thus, no new systems tend to develop and no further evolution takes place. When researchers tested what would happen if only a small amount of energy cost was needed to produce lots of variations, they found that this would produce the many new systems that are needed. However, this would also lead to many leftover systems that are useless. Over time, more and more useless systems would just accumulate. Eventually, that would cause the organism to die out from lack of efficiency. So, getting to a result of having lots of new systems means secondarily that you cannot weed out slightly deleterious traits. Over time, unhelpful traits accumulate. Eventually, such mutations pile up to an extent that the population reaches a crisis point and crashes. The junk has become an unbearable burden. The organisms go extinct. Before there can ever be survival of the fittest, there has to be arrival of the fittest on the scene. Science is now having a problem identifying how systems could even arrive, let alone be in a position to be selected as survivor. Many scientists now recognize the insufficiency of the classic Darwinian story to account for the appearance of new features or innovations in the history of life. I already pointed this out, Jim says, in chapter 29, Mathematics, called Mathematics, and chapter 73, called Punctuated Equilibrium. Scientists are having to turn their focus to other theories to account for remarkable differences between genomes, the sudden appearance of novel body plans, and genuine innovations like the bat's wing, the mammalian placenta, the vertebrate eye, or insect flight. They realize that the traditional explanation of population genetics cannot even account for the arrival of the fittest, let alone the survival of the fittest. Let me repeat the conclusion of that peer-reviewed article. Please pass it on to others so that they too will be aware of what researchers themselves are more and more aware of. Here it is. The bottom line seems to be that whatever cause generated the biological features we observe, unguided Darwinian evolution is not it. Okay. As research continues, even stubborn believers are going to have to give up on Darwinian unguided evolution. The end has to come sooner or later, and it will be scientists who will pull the plug on Darwinian evolution. There must have been some intelligence far greater than ours to engineer the world around us, Jim says. So there must be God. Okay. All right. So I wanted to let you all know that when you look at my post, and then you will see once you start reading, and then there is Jim's email address where you can email him and just share whatever you'd like with him. Okay? All right. I'll see you another time. Take care, everybody. Bye.